PARSHA's Bo. And so PARSHA's Bo begins, V'yomer Hashem LaMoshe, God says to Moshe, Bo el Paro, go to Pharaoh, Hiani hikvadati es libo, because I made his heart hard, V'yaslei v'avadav, and those of his servants, but it really means his advisors, in order so that I should place my wonders within him, because I am God. Now this is a very important statement. It's not like usual where we can tear apart the words, but it's a very fundamental statement, because what makes it really very seriously fundamental is that it does one thing for us, which is, if you have a person and the person says, everything makes sense with Judaism, but I really need a proof. If all I want to ask is a very simple thing, you see this eyeglass case? If God would make that eyeglass case go up in the air 2 inches for 1 second, I'll believe in him. That's all I ask for, and I'll believe in him. Just one thing. So I don't have to just believe what everyone says. I actually see it myself. And this paragraph here is what tells us that the answer to that will be no. And the reason behind why God will not do it is because he already did. He did it already. And he does it right here. He says, the reason that I am hardening the heart of Pharaoh, the reason that I'm causing that they should have all of these plagues, is so that you should know that I'm God. Yeah, right? You want to see me do a miracle? I'll do giant miracles. I'm going to do miracles you're never going to, you never could imagine. I'm going to turn all the water to blood. I'm going to make frogs appear all everywhere. I'm going to kill the firstborn son. I'm going to do all of these things to tell you one thing: I'm God. But I'm not going to do it again. God is not a circus performer that you can pay him your 25 cents and he'll jump through a hoop. He's telling you, I'm going to do this. You should know I'm God. And now, from now on, that you know that I'm God, you can now have your proof. But that's why it's there. And not only that, in those days you had miracles which were apparent. They were blatant miracles. The whole world could see it. When God caused the lice to come, or when God caused the wild beasts to come to the cities, and it was miraculous. It was obvious that it was a miracle. Nobody could say, it's not a miracle. It's coincidence. That's because it's what we call an apparent miracle. And because we understand that this was the time when God did the open and apparent miracles, from that we can understand today we don't have apparent miracles. Today we have hidden miracles. When God does a miracle today, a person who's a non-believer can very easily explain it away. They can say, it's not a miracle. It happens like that. You hear people say, even with apparent miracles, the Red Sea split. That's not a big deal. Science tells you that once every 10,000 years the Red Sea will split. Well, that's very nice.
It's an army, a lot of the sea.
Right. It's very nice to say, but all that means is it found it interesting that the moment that it split was the moment that the Jews needed it to split, and the moment it ended was the moment the Egyptians entered it. Right. In and of itself, that the Jews didn't know that it was going to split, and that it did split at that time is miraculous. So it's almost like people are rationalizing it. They're trying to come up with rationalizations why it's not true, and it's basically they're being intellectually dishonest. Here you can now see apparent miracles, which teaches us that today, in the year 2017, we have hidden miracles, and the hidden miracles we have are just as clearly coming from God as the apparent miracles, because he did them. And from now on, we're not able to say, just God, do a little miracle for me, and I'll believe in you, because he did them. He's going to tell you, just go ask your grandparents. They'll tell you. I did miracles for them. He did all of these. And that's why he does what he does.
I still reckon that Entebbe, when Israelis went to Entebbe, that was a miracle, that God helped them. He was on their side.
Yeah? Okay, so now, Pharaoh finally says at the bottom of this page that, okay, they can go. Right? Pharaoh's servants say to Pharaoh, how long is he going to be a pain to us? Send out the men so they can serve God. Do you not yet know that Egypt is lost? Right? The Egyptian servants, right, his advisors are saying, Pharaoh, you're being absurd. He destroys our economy. He kills off our animals. He kills off all of our livestock. He kills off all of our plants, our wheat. Everything is destroyed. There's nothing left. Stop already. Give in. Let the Hebrews leave. Like, don't you know that Egypt's destroyed? So Moshe and Aaron went back to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, okay, he gives in. Go and serve your God. But he says, who's going? Because if you looked earlier, it said, Pharaoh's servants say, send out the men that they can serve God. So Pharaoh says to him, who do you want to go? So Moshe says, I'm not going to send out just the men. I want the youngsters and the elders, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flock and with our cattle, because it's a festival to God. Now, interesting enough, all Moshe asked for is that all of the Jewish people should leave Egypt for 3 days. Right? That's all he says. We should go out for 3 days and come back. But you never see that anyone presumes that they're going to do that. Right? Pharaoh presumes they're leaving. They're not coming back. Moshe clearly knows they're leaving. They're not coming back. So what does Moshe give this ploy? He says, oh, we're just going to go for 3 days. Right? The idea is that Moshe understood that when it came to asking, to negotiating with Pharaoh, he understood Pharaoh's mind. And in Pharaoh's mind, Moshe understood that if God isn't going to harden his heart, if that hasn't happened yet, then if I want to try to get the Jews out, I'm going to use, just like Kissinger did, right, where Kissinger had promoted this idea they called it the salami plan, where you cut off a little piece at a time until you get all you want. And Moshe says, I ask for a little bit, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and it's more. It's easier for the mind of Pharaoh to give in than for me to go to him and say, I want everything. First go in and say, we want 3 days. After the 3 days, you say, well, you know what? We're going to take 20 days. We're going to take 100 days. We're going to take a year. All right, we're not coming back. By the time he gets to that, he negotiated piece by piece. If I already said they could go for 3 days, what's the big deal? Let them go 5. If I say they can already go a year, so what's the big deal? I let them not come back. What do I need? If I got by for a year, I can get by without them. So Moshe understood this psychologically, that would be easier to get Pharaoh to negotiate and accomplish the goal. So he says it, but Pharaoh doesn't fall for it. Pharaoh realizes right away that they're not coming back, and Moshe never goes back to using that ploy. And from then on, he just talks about them leaving. Right? And, of course, Pharaoh changes his mind, and the locusts come. And then it happens again. It continually happens where you have these, right? Moshe negotiates with Pharaoh. Pharaoh gives in. Moshe is ready to go. Pharaoh changes his mind. The plague happens. And this keeps continuing on until you get to the bottom of page 345. You have a very interesting change. Here it says, Hashem strengthens the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not wish to send them out, which has been happening all along. And Pharaoh says to Moshe, go from here. Beware, do not see my face anymore, for on the day you see my face, you shall die. So here, Pharaoh tells Moshe, that's it, I'm done negotiating with you. Every time you come in here, you make another threat, and you do more things to destroy my country. I'm not negotiating with a terrorist. I'm done. All right, get out of here. You come back here, I'll kill you. So Moshe says, you've spoken correctly. I'll never see you again. Right? Moshe says, no, you've got it backwards. You think you're going to banish me because if you see me, you'll kill me again? You're right, you won't see me again. Don't worry about it. You're done. And he says, one more plague I'll bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. After that, he'll send you out. Right? And that's going to be the last one, which is the one of the firstborn. And here, where Pharaoh gives this ultimatum ultimately to Moshe, Moshe accepts it. But it raises the question, Pharaoh was unquestionably the most powerful man in the world. He ran the most powerful country in the world. He clearly had an army. And he was himself the head of the country. So could you imagine going to like Uganda and seeing Idi Amin and threatening Idi Amin? What do you think he'd do? He'll just kill you, right? He won't say okay or no. He'll just kill you. That's what a dictator does. A dictator He doesn't need to argue with you. There's no system that's going to put the dictator in jail. Like, is Pharaoh going to be punished for killing Moshe? No. So why doesn't he do it? Then the first thing that's got to come to mind is Pharaoh sees Moshe as a pain in the neck. Every time I turn around, he's attacking something else. And he's making statements. You know what? Who is this guy? I have to listen to him? I'm Pharaoh. So he just cut him his head off. It's over. But he doesn't do it. And it's very strange that he doesn't do that. And we learn a very important point from this. And it comes up again very soon. And that point is that Pharaoh was a true believer. In other words, Pharaoh believed he was right. He believed that there is no Hebrew God. He believed that his gods were more powerful than whatever force was behind Moshe. He believed that Moshe was going to lose. So if he kills Moshe, that's a sign of weakness. It is. It's a sign of weakness because if I don't kill him, he's going to win. So I have to kill him. So Pharaoh says, no, I'm not doing that. I believe in my way. Moshe believes in his way. Let him come and try. And every time Moshe tries, Pharaoh's going to throw him out because I'm more powerful. So if he kills him, he says, I'm not more powerful. I have to kill him in order to stop him. Here, I'm more powerful. Pharaoh was like that. And we see it later on if we just jump ahead, and we see about how Moshe says to him, you have the death of the firstborn. And it says that in the middle of the night, a cry goes out, and people wake up, and people get up and they see that there's dead people in their house. Every family loses their firstborn. And then what does it say happens? It's a very interesting thing. It says, right here, that God says that he's going to destroy Pharaoh, right? And the firstborn from Pharaoh's until the child, right, is going to be destroyed. So it says that when we get to it, you'll see it. But he says Moses says that all of the firstborn die, and then it says Pharaoh gets up, and he comes down, and he sees that his firstborn son died. Right? So Rashi says that when it says that Pharaoh got up, Rashi says from his bed. Now the purpose of Rashi is that Rashi raises answers to questions in the PARSHA that bother him, but he doesn't always tell you what the question is. Just tells you the answer. So we have to wonder when it says that Pharaoh got up, and Rashi says from his bed, right, to see that everybody had died. What is the purpose of telling us? What problem did Rashi have that he has to say that Pharaoh got up from his bed? And the answer is the same thing we just said. Pharaoh believed that he was God. He didn't believe that God would kill the firstborn. Even though 9 times Moshe said God's going to do it, he did it. Moshe's batting 1,000. He's always right. Nevertheless, Pharaoh knew that Moshe's wrong. Pharaoh is God. Pharaoh is right. And therefore, when Moshe says God's going to kill your firstborn child, including Pharaoh's firstborn child, who's going to be the next Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh doesn't believe him to such an extent that he puts on his pajamas and goes to bed the night that they're supposed to die. He doesn't, like most parents, they'd sit up. They'd hold their child so that to stop whatever's going to happen, to make sure he doesn't get hurt. Pharaoh says, all right, you told me there's going to be blood, there was blood. You told me there's going to be frogs, there were frogs. You told me there'd be wild animals, there were wild animals. This isn't going to happen. The firstborn's not going to get killed. You're totally wrong. It's not going to happen. So Pharaoh says, I don't care what you say, I'm going to bed. If I insult somebody, I have trouble going to sleep at night. Right? If you think Pharaoh, who knows that every firstborn child in every house, including his own firstborn son, that he must love, is going to die, he's so sure it's not going to happen, he's not laying away at night. He's not tossing and turning. He puts on his pajamas, he goes to bed. Not until there's a big scream throughout the whole country when people find their children dead, does the scream wake him up. And that shows you how much of a true believer he is. That's why he didn't kill Moshe, because he really believed he was right. He didn't pretend to be God. He believed he was God. He believed it to the point that he knew that his child would not die. And he died. That's what it's telling you. It's a very important point, that this was a fight between idol worship, the idea that man is God, or man can create God, man can manipulate God, and that God is God. This was a fight between that. And in this case, of course, as we see, God showed the world who's in charge, who's the boss. That's what he shows them here. Right, a very important point. Now, Moshe then says to him, that God says to Moshe, you see, here on the top of 347, one more plague I'll bring to Pharaoh and Egypt, and then he'll send you out. And he sends you out, it'll be over. Please speak into the ears of the people and let them ask. First, they're going to borrow things. Then he says in verse 4, Moshe says to Pharaoh, at about midnight, God said to me, at about midnight I shall go out in the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn will die. God didn't say that. God said, at midnight I will go out. But Pharaoh says, at about midnight. It's a big difference. About midnight could be 12:02, 12:03, 11:57. At midnight, God says, is exactly midnight. So there's a couple of problems with this. First thing, midnight doesn't exist. There's no such thing as midnight. What is midnight? 1 second before 12 is not midnight, right? 1 second after 12 is not midnight, right? 12 itself, right, is also not midnight, because you can split the second of 12 into halves, and you can split that into halves. You can split everything into halves. In other words, you have to have everything cut. You have to have three things in order to have a middle. You don't have three. You have one side, you have the other side. Midnight does not exist. There is no such thing as exactly midnight. And Moshe understood that. And if he said to Pharaoh that at midnight God would kill the firstborn, and he understood that Pharaoh's timekeepers couldn't tell when midnight was. So the firstborn would die. You know what they'd do? They'd go to Pharaoh and they'd say, you know what? It didn't happen. Yeah, okay, the firstborn died. But not at midnight. They died half of a second before, half a second after. They didn't die at midnight. There's no, right? So it could be because their clocks were off. It could be because they didn't understand, or it could be there's no actual thing called midnight. It doesn't really exist. Right? And therefore, Moshe changes God's word to say at about midnight. So, right? So you have to ask then why? What do we care? If you imagine if I'm Moshe and I go in to see Pharaoh, and after all this going on, I say to him, listen, Pharaoh, at midnight, all of the firstborn are going to die. And Pharaoh wakes up, he hears a scream, he wakes up 1 second after midnight, and they're all dead. Right? It happened. Right? Let's say Pharaoh gets up, he hears the screams, he gets up, it's 2 minutes after midnight. Pharaoh says, it didn't happen. You said God would kill him at midnight. He killed him at 2 minutes after midnight. There's no such, your God's wrong. It wasn't your God. Right? In other words, it's absurd, but that's what people will say. And you have it all the time in our lives that people do this. You know, you promise something, and what happens is not exactly what you promised. Right? It's just as good, just as important, but it's not exactly what you said. People just say it's no good. It means nothing. Right? You promised me that you would come here on Tuesday to give me the money you owe me. You came on Monday. You came a day early. You didn't do what you said. You came on Wednesday. You didn't do what you said. Whatever it is that you said, you didn't do it. Right? I don't believe it. Right? Pharaoh's. Right? Do we really have to worry that Pharaoh's magicians, his timekeepers, they're off by a fraction of a second? So they say God killed the firstborn, but a quarter of a second before midnight. So you see, it didn't happen. Pharaoh's right. Their God is not the God. Right? Even though all of them are dead. It shows you how silly people can be, that they will actually act in such a way. They'll act in such an absurd way. And therefore Moshe is not afraid that they're going to have the wrong time. What he is that he expects they will have the wrong time. And because of it, they won't take heed to what God actually did. They won't learn from it. So therefore he changes the word of God to take into account human frailty. Even though God did do it at midnight. The problem is we don't know when midnight is. even if their clocks are right. Midnight is a magical time because it doesn't really exist. As I said, every time you get to 12 o'clock, exactly 12 o'clock, it's after 12 o'clock. It's before 12 o'clock, but 12 o'clock doesn't really exist because you keep separating it. 1 second, now you have half a second, quarter of a second, eighth of a second, eighth. It keeps getting smaller, smaller, but you could never get to that one point that is 12. And that's what Moses is trying to explain here. So now it says that all of the firstborn animals, firstborn slaves, the firstborn royalty, firstborn people in the castle, firstborn of Pharaoh are dead. And it happens. So now...
But Rabbi, also that any of the Jews who didn't put the, the blood on the lintels, their children also died.
Yeah, that would happen as well.
Anybody.
Because when God tells them to take the lamb and slaughter it, it's a very significant thing, because God says to them as follows: before we're going to slaughter, they're going to have the firstborn. I want you to put a sign on your door as to who you are. You think God really needed a sign on the door? No. Right? So what does He ask them to do that for? God, I have to put. God's going to come and kill all the firstborn unless you have a sign on your door. So let's say I put up a sign on my door: "Don't kill my firstborn." I put it on my door. Don't kill I'm Jewish. Don't kill my firstborn. And the sign blows off in the wind. So is God going to come and kill the firstborn? I'm not Egyptian. I'm Jewish. Nope. He's not going to do it. So what do we care that God says put blood on the door from the animal? Because it's not the actual thing that God needs to see the blood. We have to realize that the animal that they're talking about is a lamb, a sheep. And a sheep, right, is a god to the Egyptians. Just like we have the idea that a cow is a god to the Hindus. So a sheep is a god to the Egyptians. So here you imagine this. You're a slave. Your parents were slaves. Your grandparents were slaves. You've been slaves for 240 years. And God comes to you and says, I want you to take your master's God, your master. You were born into slavery. I want you to take him around the neck and attach a rope to him and put him in your front yard. And when your master comes to you and says, what are you doing with my God? What are you doing? With my sheep. It's my God. We say, oh, our God said to take this sheep and kill it. You don't think that the Jews are going to be a little bit afraid? That the Egyptians are going to kill them? You can imagine, any country you're in. Yeah. A bunch of Jews are living in Yemen, and they say, go and take some symbol of Islam and make fun of it in your front yard. Right? See, what do you think will happen? Right, they're afraid they'll all get killed. So you think the Egyptians aren't going to kill their slaves? Of course they're going to kill their slaves. So who would do that? To take the sheep. God says, take the sheep and put them in your front yard. And then after they're there for a while, take them inside, slaughter them. Take the blood, put it on the door. So the Egyptians see them in the front yard, see that you took them away. And next thing they see is blood on your front door. They see that you killed their God, that you went and did that. How much more chutzpah did you have? And that's exactly the point. God is telling the Jews, you need to do an act of defiance. You need to protest. You have to stand up against your masters and show that you believe in me. Because I'll take care of you if you do this. I'll support you if you do this. I'll be there for you if you do this. But you got to do it. If you didn't do it, then you're saying I'm not part of the Jewish people. I'm not prepared to do that. That's what you're saying, right? Then therefore their firstborn died also, because they chose not to do it. That's why it's telling us this. But then we have one of the most odd things. The Jewish people have just gotten to the point where they have become a nation. Up until this point, they're the Hebrews. They're the children of Jacob. Now, there's a lot of children of Jacob, but they're still not Jews. Right? They actually don't become Jews until the Torah is given. But they're not the people, the nation of Israel, until this moment. When they leave Egypt, they leave as a nation. Right? When they entered as a family. They left as a nation. And the first thing God says to them as a nation is found on this page. What could it be? You are the people of one God. It teaches us Shema. Or you are the people right, who are prepared to stand up for Judaism no matter what. It teaches the mitzvah of dying for the sake of God. Right? Whatever it is, this is some enormous, important, heroic act. What does he say to us instead? God says to Moshe and Aaron, this month shall be for you the beginning of the months. It shall be for you the first of the months of the year. He tells them, you have to do you have the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, of following a lunar calendar based on the months. That's what he's telling us. That's the first mitzvah he gives us. Isn't this sort of like anticlimactic? Okay, here you have this big buildup. The Jews are slaves, and the Jews are about to get out, and the firstborn are going to be killed, and we take the sheep, and we kill the sheep in the front yard, and we put the blood. We're all excited, right? And we're going to go out of Egypt tomorrow, and God says, okay, you're now the nation. I want you to start counting your days by the new month. You say, like, big deal. Tell me something great. Tell me something inspirational. Tell me a mitzvah that's going to change the world. I have to follow the calendar? Who cares? It's like an afterthought. But it's not. This is telling us a very important thing. Because what does it mean to follow a calendar of months based on the moon? The word in Hebrew for month is called chodesh. Chodesh comes from the root word of chadash, new. Why? Because you have a new moon. The moon, every first day of the month, you see the new moon. It starts to grow. The end of the month, it disappears. It starts new again. This teaches us an important lesson. Besides the fact that it's the Jewish way of counting months, which is a fact, it is. But why did God tell us this now? What's so important that we have to know this now? Is because what he's saying is, you're slaves. You have slave mentality. A slave doesn't know how to make a decision. A slave marries who his master tells him to marry. A slave wears what his master tells him to wear. A slave eats what his master gives him. He can't choose anything. He can't choose where to live, how to look, who to marry, what to eat, nothing. He's saying it's a new world now. It's a Chodesh, a Rosh Chodesh. It's the head of newness. Not just a new month. Your life, you can change. You can be different. You can be a whole new you. It's you. That's what he's saying. And God's telling the Jewish people, you can be something different. You can change. You're not slaves anymore. You're the most powerful, important, spiritual nation in the world. The world was created for you to bring it to conclusion, to bring the world to perfection. And you look at yourselves today, and you're slaves, and you can't figure out what you want to eat, and you can't figure out where you want to go, and what you want to do, because you never had to make decisions before. But you can change. Right? We have certain expressions today when we talk about people who do things wrong. We say, a leopard can't change his spots, right? You can't teach old dogs new tricks. You meet a guy, and the guy, this guy has gotten in trouble with stealing. So you make sure, he's a thief. You're careful around him. He can't change. Yeah, he says he changed. He looks like he changed. He dresses different. He acts different. But no, a leopard can't change its spots. You put your money on the table, it'll disappear. Right? God's saying it's not true. God's telling us here that not only in the story, but in our lives today, in 2017, we have the ability to change. We can be different people. The person you are today, it might not be the person you want to be. And you can become the person you want to be. And that's what this is telling you. And that's why it's so important that it's the first mitzvah. Because the basis of being a Jew is that we can change, we can improve, we can become somebody, we can work on ourselves, we can do those things. That's the important point, and that's what he's saying here. That the basis of being a Jew, right, really boils down to the ability to change, to the ability to improve, to be a better person. When people try to say to us all the time, well, what do you try so hard? You're not going to change, right? You always, you want to stop smoking. You've tried 20 times, right? Sure, anyone can quit smoking. I've quit 100 times. Right? Oh yeah, sure, it's easy. Anyone can lose weight. I've gone on so many diets. I've lost 5,000 pounds in my life. Well, of course, I've gained it back over the course of my life, but I lost that much. See, right? People say you can't change. That's what they tell you. The world tells you this. People make fun of us for trying to change, right? And people make these New Year's resolutions in January. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to go to the gym. So I hear on the radio today, statistically, it's a known fact that 2/3 of all people who make New Year's resolutions have given up their resolution by February 1st. Today's February 1st. That's it. You decide, the guy says, oh yeah, I go to a gym. Every year in January, the gym's full. All these people with fancy new Lululemon outfits, right? New clothes, new sneakers. They come in, they run around, right? And then by February, they stop coming, right? That's what people want us to believe. But the fact is, if you want to be the person who changes your life, you want to become fit and you're not fit, you want to become stricter in your religious practices and you're not, you can do it. You just have to try. You have to want to. Right? I learned. I was away at this at this weekend for the run that was on. So we had the pleasure of having Rabbi Pesach Krohn was there with us. He's a famous storyteller. And he basically was telling us a story, which the end of the story was that people tried to tell you that that were statistics. Remember, I was at a group that was dealing with sick children, right? Chai Lifeline deals with sick children, and there are children who have illnesses that will kill them, or very well could kill them, and they know it. The kids know it. If they're older than 7, 8 years old, they pretty much figure out that there's a very good chance that they're going to die, and many of them actually think they're going to die. So what am I going to go through all this for? All this pain, all of this work, all of this chemo, and this and that, and exercise and rejuvenation. I'm just going to die. What's the purpose? I'm 14 years old. I'm not going to ever become 15, right? And it's a normal reaction. And what I heard from one person after another at this conference, where these kids got up to talk, or the parents got up to talk about their kids, was that this organization gave them the ability to believe that they can beat it. Some of them didn't beat it, but they believed they could. And those who did told me, like I met this one kid, we were leaving and we were going to the airport, so I call a cab, and I'm waiting for the cab. This 21-year-old comes over to me and says, I'm going to the airport also. So I think, he wants a ride, 21-year-old kid. So come with me. He says, no, I got a car coming. You come with me. Right? And he wouldn't let us pay. So we asked him, why are you here? He says, well, I ran in the race. He says, but I was one of the kids. I said, you were one of the kids? Yourself? He looks like a regular guy, 21-year-old kid. Yeah, I had brain cancer when I was 14. And I had it until I was 17. And Chai Lifeline saved my life. I said, how did they save your life? They're not doctors. He said, Chai Lifeline saved my life because they got me to believe that I could get better. I could do that. And because I could get better, I got better. If I didn't think I could, I wouldn't have tried so hard. What's the use? I knew I could get better. Chai Lifeline taught me that, so they saved me. He says, and therefore, when I, how did he put it? When I was 19, and they told me that I beat it, I trained myself to run. I ran when I was 20, and I'm running this year when I'm 21. To show my support. Right? That's what this is saying. That's why the first mitzvah is Rosh Chodesh, because you can change. Right? Chai Lifeline taught those kids that. Our parents tell it to us. We have to tell it to ourselves. Being in a rut is a horrible thing. We can get out of that rut. We can change. I'm not talking about clinical depression. There we need help. But a person who gets depressed in a non-clinical way, they're in a rut, things are difficult for them. It's the same thing day in and day out. You can change. You think you're at a point where I'm 150 pounds overweight. How am I ever going to lose weight? You can do it. I've seen it. I've seen people do it. Lots of people didn't, but most of them didn't try. But you can do it. People think I'm not going to live to be, older. I abused my body as a child. I didn't really take care of myself. You want to do it, you can do it. You can quit smoking. You can give up anything. So that's what this says here. This month shall be for you the beginning of the months. It shall be for you the first of the months of the year. And that's really what God says to us. And then, after we know that, that's when he tells them to go take the lamb. Because you're not a slave anymore. You don't want to be a slave? You know, we have in the world, I don't have to give you even any names, but we have examples of nations of people who were slaves. And that hundreds of years later, they still act like slaves. They're not slaves, but they have slave mentality, right? Or you get cultures where people come in and they steal from them. Like you had a lot of the white people went into Africa, and they stole the culture from the black people, took it away, right? Forced them to act like animals, right? Attacked them, right? Put chains on them, made them into slaves, took away their culture, and then just gave it back. 75 years later, 100 years later, boom, okay, you're free now. They didn't give them back their culture. They gave them back a life. They didn't give them back, how to live. So many of them are still think like slaves or rebel like slaves. Right? Not that they can't change, but they weren't given that opportunity. The government just said, okay, you're free. That's it. Right? They had it with the Holocaust survivors. People who went in the Holocaust, they went through horrible times. Everybody around them tried to hurt them. Their best friends tried to hurt them. Their business partners tried to hurt them. And, the government and the police wouldn't help them. It was legal to steal from Jews, to hurt Jews, to rape Jews. So you could do it all you wanted. And people did. It destroyed the minds of the survivors. When they were in the Holocaust, they couldn't understand. How can there be no justice in the world? How can it be that they're allowed to steal from us? Right? And then the war ended, and nobody helped them. Right? I know that I would speak to my mother. After the war was over, the world expected them to act normal. Like my mother, for her whole childhood, was as a refugee. Her friends suddenly didn't like her anymore. And she had her house taken away, and was sent to a foreign country, and then suddenly, okay, you're fine, go ahead, live your life. How's supposed to live her life, right? Where she spent 7 years looking for food. Now she's supposed to be normal when it comes to food, right? 7 years where her neighbors or police officers tried to kill her, so she should be able to go talk to a police officer now with no psychological help. With no financial help, with no administrative things, organizations to help them, there weren't. Right? That's because they didn't have that wasn't given to them, like God gives to the Jewish people, the ability to change. He gave them first He gave them the ability to change, and then He gave them the mitzvah to change, to kill the sheep. Right? Only at that point, and that's really what we see that happening. Okay. So if you look on 357 in verse 30, it shows you what I said earlier. It says, Pharaoh rose up at midnight, he and all his servants and every firstborn animal. He and all of his servants and all Egypt. And there was a great outcry in Egypt, and there was not a house where there was no corpse. And if you read the Rashi, where it says, Vayakam Pharaoh mumitaso. Rashi says, Pharaoh got up from his bed. Like I told you. You'd think that a regular person wouldn't be going to bed. But Pharaoh believed in what he believed. And right, so this was a perfect example of two believers. Today we don't have this. It used to be very common that you had people like in the 1930s and 1920s, where they would talk philosophy and they'd argue which is the right way and what is expected of us in this world and what we're supposed to do. Today we spend our time with our iPhones and our Super Bowl and things like that, right? Our entertainment. Back then, people would look at philosophy. Well, in the days of Pharaoh, people took it seriously. Pharaoh said, "I'm God. Yeah, I don't care about what you say. You think you're going to kill my firstborn son? Even if you said out of 9 or 10 times, and you're right 9 times, the 10th time you'll be wrong. I have no basis to believe you." And Pharaoh was wrong. That's why he went to sleep. Now, the next thing that we have, just to discuss, talk that the Jews leave Egypt. And as they're leaving Egypt, it says that we have a mitzvah to eat matzah because the Jews didn't have time to make matzah.
Bread.
To make bread, right. But it's really not true, is it? Because they knew they were leaving Egypt. They knew it. God tells them, I'm going to kill the firstborn, right? And the next day you're going. They're going. They're leaving. So that was, there was days there. Why didn't he do it? They had to take that animal for 3 days. Why didn't they make bread? I mean, they didn't have time, it says, to make bread. But they had time to make bread. Why didn't they make bread? How long does it take? 90 minutes? 2 hours to make bread? They didn't have 2 hours. They had it. So why? And we say, well, we eat matzah all of Pesach. We eat matzah because they didn't have time to make bread. Well, I'll tell you that they had time. So it's sort of a weird mitzvah. We don't eat more. We eat moror because the Jews had bitter lives. That's true. They did. For 200 years, they were slaves. So we eat moror for that. But we eat matzah for 7 days because they didn't have time to make bread when they did have time to make bread. So what is it trying to tell us? I think that the answer is that throughout this whole story, every time Moshe would go to Pharaoh, the Jews would think it's time to go. We're leaving. Moshe's going to Pharaoh. God says we want to go out. The Jews believe God. We're going. So Moshe goes to Pharaoh and says, let the people go, or I'm going to turn your waters into blood. Pharaoh says, no. He turns the water to blood. The Jew says, let's pack. We're going. He turned the water to blood. Pharaoh's going to let us go. He doesn't. He comes back. He says, okay, I'm going to let wild animals loose in your streets. They're going to kill people. They're going to eat your livestock. Pharaoh says, no, I'm not letting him go. It happens. The Jew says, okay, it happened. Let's pack. Every time. Let's pack. And they don't go. Finally, by the 10th one, they said, you know what? God's striking out here. 9 out of 10 times over it. God's messed up. I'm sick of this. I'm not packing. How many times am I going to pack? Pack and unpack. I'm not doing it anymore. I've given up. We're not going anywhere. Right? So when it finally came true that they were leaving, they didn't have time because they weren't ready. They didn't believe it. They didn't think we were going. So therefore, they needed to pack. They needed to prepare everything. They needed to make their bread. And they didn't have time to do it because they didn't think it was going to happen. So they didn't take the time and use it. They had a couple of days, right, from the time that started until the time the firstborn were killed. And they just said, hey, well, we're just going to watch TV for a couple of days because we're not going anywhere. I'm not going to pack. I don't care what Moshe says. Moshe's gone 9 times to Pharaoh, and 9 times we haven't gone. It's enough already, guys. You imagine you're in a travel club, and every time they cancel the flight, right? 9 times out of 10, you ain't coming there. I'm sorry. I've come every Tuesday for the last 9 weeks to the airport to take this flight to go on my vacation. And now it's the 10th one. You want me to show up again and to sit here and wait so you can cancel my flight again? I'm not coming. Right? So they didn't come, and they didn't cancel the flight. They had to be ready. So they didn't have time to make their bread. They could only make matzah. And we need to remember that. That's what the message is. It's not that it was so fast that they had to eat matzah. It's they gave up hope. And so they had to eat matzah. And we have to know you can't give up hope. That no matter what happens, if God promises us you're leaving Egypt, you're going to leave Egypt. Maybe not this time. Maybe not this time. You're going to leave. It's not God who promised what day we were leaving. We thought. We presumed. Moshe's going to Pharaoh. We're going to go. God didn't say you're leaving today. Right? Not until the last one. And he tells them, get ready, you're going. And he said, no, we're not. Come on. Right? So that shows you, that's the message for us. The message is you don't give up hope. You don't go making up your own rules. God says you're going to go, you're going. Be ready for it. And we, today, eat matzah because they didn't do that. They didn't give up hope. They gave up hope. And they weren't ready. So he says, therefore, that's why we have to do it. That's the message that it gives us here, that you really need to do that. We then get to the point where you have the Passover offering in 361. Now, the Passover offering is an extremely significant sacrifice. It's very different than any other one, and it's the one that commemorates this whole story. And here you take the lamb, just like they did. You put it on a rotisserie, just like they did. You eat it whole. It means you don't clean it out first. Like normally you would clean out all the insides, the intestines, the heart, the organs, and you just eat the meat. We don't, in this sacrifice you don't. You eat the insides, right? In general, it sounds like a great meal. I mean, who doesn't like rotisserie lamb? Have some nice, lamb. It'd be great. But it tells you certain rules. You have to eat it in a certain way. You can't break the bones to suck out the inside. And you and we have to eat the whole thing. You also have to eat it as a family. You can't do it alone. You have to have a family unit. That's why today everybody has these big Passover Seders.
And you have
It's symbolic of that.
the roast lamb, the neck or something like
Right,
that.
symbolic.
Symbolic.
So here we're learning an important thing. First is we're learning the significance of family. That as the Jewish people are about to begin, we have to remember the special importance that God puts into family. Husband, wife, children, family. Right? Grandchildren, extended family, whatever you want, but family. That is the unit. The Jewish people are built up of families, not of individuals. Not that individuals are excluded. They're very welcome, right? And they're very much a part of it. But in order for them to be existing as individuals, they had to come from a family, right? So family is the source, and that's really the essence, right, that it teaches us. And the idea is that you had to eat the whole animal. The whole entity was cooked as a whole because it's symbolic of the whole idea of wholeness, of that the family celebrating the wholeness of Jewish life, of the significance of it. And this is why this is such a significant one, besides the fact that what it reminds us for, which is it reminds us going all the way back to the story of Passover and what God did.
And then also here it is which I learned long ago, that you shouldn't have a non-Jew at a Seder. Well, it says here uncircumcised.
But that even means a Jew who's not circumcised.
Yes, yeah.
Right, because what a holiday is, and Passover being the example we're using, was a holiday that was given to the Jews. God gave this to the Jews. We paid for this with our blood, the holiday of Passover. It's not like it came out of the sky. God gave it to us because we deserved it. And therefore, the Jewish family becomes the Jewish nation. And that's why, and the basic symbol of being a Jew for a male is circumcision. That a lot of people, I get this question a lot when I talk to people, that they say, that they weren't circumcised, that they're not Jewish. They don't feel that they're Jewish until they're circumcised. It's not true. If you're born a Jew, you're a Jew, even if you're not circumcised. But being uncircumcised is a serious problem, because it is the basic fundamental symbol of being a Jew. What it means is if you're not circumcised, it doesn't mean that you're not a Jew. It means you're a Jew who doesn't have the symbol of being a Jew, right? So that's the idea, is that that a person does it. It's a basic sign of it. So it ends with numerous ideas of Passover, the firstborn. It has like the firstborn child, as the firstborn of the donkey, right? And then it ends here with the mitzvah of tefillin. And it says at the end, there should be a sign upon your arm and an ornament between your eyes, for with a strong hand Hashem removed us from Egypt. This is the mitzvah of tefillin. Now it's very interesting because we know it's the mitzvah of tefillin, but you can't tell it from what it says. A sign on your arm and a jewel between your eyes. Right? First thing is, you don't wear tefillin between your eyes. Right? You wear them on your head. Right? If you wear your tefillin here, it's actually wrong. You have to wear it here. Next thing is, how do we know that what they are? They're black boxes made out of leather, worn by men, worn during the daytime and not at nighttime. They have certain inscriptions from the Torah within them. There's all these rules that have to do with tefillin. Where do we get it from? This is the mitzvah. You should wear it on a sign on your arm and a jewel between your eyes. Well, how do we know that that's tefillin? This is a very important quote for us because it is one of the basic proofs that when the Torah was given to us, which will be coming up in a couple weeks, the Torah itself, this book that we have here, is basically like the notes the student takes when he goes to class. there's that. And what happens when a student takes notes? He writes things in shorthand. He doesn't write every word the professor says. He writes little pieces so that when he reads it, it reminds him what the professor said. Right? Because you can imagine, if you have to write down word for word what the professor says, the professor couldn't speak normally. He'd have to speak very, very slow with every word at a time, because that's how you'd write. So you take, if I talk about, let's say the roses are red, right? So you could just say, that a very simple way, just say red. We're talking about flowers, so it means roses are red. So the Torah itself is considered the notes for the class. What was the class? That's the oral law. The oral law, which was later written into the Talmud, is really where we have all the details. So in the Talmud, it tells us that this line means tefillin. Without the Talmud, you wouldn't know what this means. If you tell me, I believe the Bible, but I don't believe in the Talmud, and you wear tefillin, it's absurd. Because there are many mitzvahs like that. You should write this upon the doorposts of your home, right? Well, that's a mitzvah of mezuzah. You know anybody who writes the mezuzah on their door, on the doorpost? They actually write it on your doorpost. That's what it says, right? We take a piece of parchment, we write it on the parchment, we put the parchment on the door, right? Who writes it on their door, right? It says you should make a sukkah. You live in a sukkah for 7 days. Does it say it has to be outside? No. You can build a sukkah in your living room. How do you know you can't? The oral law. Because like about the mezuzah, like about tefillin, like so much more of the Torah comes from the Talmud. It's not that the Talmud and the Torah are separate. The Talmud is God's lesson to us. The Torah are the notes we took. Right? That's the idea, that they go hand in hand together. And this line is one of the proofs for it, because you would never know what tefillin are, but you ask anybody what it means, a sign on your arm and a jewel between your eyes, and they'll tell you it means tefillin. And then you say, well, how do you know that? And how do you know what they look like? And how do you know who wears them? How do you know it's not women who wear them? It's men who wear them. How do you know it's not boys, but it's men? Right? Only post bar mitzvah. How do you know it's Jews and non-Jews can't wear them? How do you know they're boxes made out of leather and they're black? The Talmud teaches us that. That's how we know it. And that's one of the proofs for this. Yeah.
And when did they write the Talmud? When the Talmud happened versus the Torah? Torah was oral, and then when did they start writing the Talmud?
This is what actually happened. When Moshe went up on Sinai, God gave him the mitzvahs, most of the mitzvahs, and the story in the Torah up until that moment. Creation, Noah, Abraham, the slavery, up until that moment. Then he comes down, and as they're going through the years in the desert to go to Israel, God is saying, "Vayedaber Hashem Moshe lemor." God says to Moshe, say. Moshe writes it down, and he says it, right? So he's now writing the history as it's happening. So they have the incident with the spies. Moshe's writing it down right after it happens, not before it happens, after, right? So at the conclusion, what's happened is God teaches Moshe all of the depth behind the Torah, all of the laws, all of the mitzvahs, everything. And Moshe tells them what's written and explains to them all that he knew. And he says, this is the written law. You keep this law. It's the basis of Judaism. The oral law that I'm telling you, right, is how to live according to the written law. But it's all the details of how to live. Right? I want every generation, the parents should teach the children. So you have the written law, you have that. But the oral law, I'm going to tell it to you. Moshe told it to Joshua. Joshua taught it to the 70 elders. The elders taught it to the people. The people taught it to their children. Their children taught it to their children. It got to a point around the times of the Romans where Jews were being persecuted so badly that you didn't have enough time for fathers to teach their children. And we were losing the Torah. Right up until that point, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And children were orphans. They didn't have fathers. They had fathers, and the fathers are running from city to city to save their kids' lives. They don't have time to teach them. It's the Jews suddenly started to realize we're forgetting the oral tradition. It's being lost. We don't know now. Should tefillin be square or round? Should they this big or this big? Do they have this parsha in this way or this parsha in this way? How we're losing the information. So they decided that it's required now, in order to save Torah, we have to break Torah. And they broke the law that says you're not supposed to write it down. And they said, well, otherwise we're not going to save it. So the rabbis of the era said it was justified, and they wrote it down. They first wrote it down in what's called the Mishnah, which is the entire oral law in very concise form. But people started to forget the formulas, how to decipher the Mishnah. So they took the Mishnah and they wrote a commentary. That's called the Gemara. Now the Gemara is all like basically discussions explaining to us what is the Word of God. Not what might be or could be, but it is. They came up with the conclusions using logic as to what the original words were that God used when he told Moshe. So we have that information. It was handed down generation to generation in written form. So that's how it happened. Right? And as time goes on, what happens is our minds become less and less able. We think that we're going to get more advanced. But the reality was, in the days of the Mishnah, people could read the Mishnah and tell you the whole Talmud because they understood it. Then he wrote the Talmud, and anybody could read the Talmud. Now today, not anybody can read the Talmud. You need more. Right? People are losing the abilities. It's not that they're forgetting it. Our minds don't have the capabilities of what people's minds back then could do. And as time goes on, we have less and less. So we have to have more and more books, which are more and more simple in order to understand. So what they could understand by reading one page, I might have to read 2 books. Because they could use the formulas, and they could decipher it, and they could understand what it's saying, while I can't. I've lost that ability. Like, we have actual books today that we consider books of advanced philosophy that were actually written for children. The Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch, which is the basis of Jewish law today, right? Where they took the Talmud and they found the laws and they pulled them out of it and they wrote just the law. That book was originally written for women and children because men could look into the Talmud and tell you the answer. Today, we're lucky if men can understand the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. Even that's concise and difficult for men. So that we have to have commentaries on it in order to explain it. But it was originally written for uneducated people, because the educated people didn't need it. It was too simple. It would be like if you're driving for 30 years, you don't need to read the driver's handbook, how to turn left. We've been doing it for 30 years, right? Same idea. Now, back then, a person knew Talmud so well, he didn't need a book to tell him which way to turn. He already knew from the Talmud which way to turn. But then we lost the ability. Our minds couldn't accept that anymore. It became too hard for us. Today, to read the Talmud and decipher the Talmud is a very difficult thing. But back then it wasn't. To define the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, which was written for less educated women and uneducated children, is today, you have to have an advanced Talmudic understanding to understand that book. Because our minds are weaker as time goes on. Right? Our minds aren't more advanced. We're more technologically advanced, but we're less advanced. So that's the point here. All right, well, we better stop with that. I hope we'll see everybody soon. We have the Shloshim Memorial for George Friedman this week, for those who knew George, and it's on Thursday night. I hope that you'll join with us, and they'll have a reception afterwards. And it was a special man, an important part of our synagogue and our community. So certainly it's good if you're able to come out. And lots of good things coming up, or important things, let's say.
Progressive dinner on Saturday night.
That's right. We have the progressive dinner. I'm looking forward to that Saturday night.
Purim party. There's a lot
Yeah, that's on its way also.